We've heard a lot today about lots of new exciting things in new exciting companies, and I think San Francisco, this is the first time we've held this conference here in the city, and I think that's testament to the change that's happening here in the city with the tech sector. And but Dolby was San Francisco tech before San Francisco tech was cool. They've been here for a long time, and this is a momentous change in an organization with the history that Dolby has. And so we're going to talk, is this the clicker? About the transformations that we're undertaking. One is about the corporate culture. So doing these kinds of things in a company that's 40 plus years old that hasn't really ever done anything like this before is very difficult, but like I said, vital. We're also transforming architecture that wasn't meant to do what we're making it do, and that's really interesting on its own. And then Dolby's investment in that neighborhood signals a real long-lasting transformation, we feel, for mid-market, and Dolby's really proud to be part of that change. So that's essentially what we're going to talk about. John's going to tell us a little bit about Dolby.
So if we talk about change and transformation, it seems appropriate to talk about our founder, Ray Dolby, who sadly passed away back in September. But when you talk about change, Ray changed the way we listen to music, enjoy surround sound in our home, enjoy the movies. The notion of taking impure sound and making it sound as perfect as possible anywhere where it was in any of those areas. That was really, he was a problem solver. And it's kind of a good analogy to what we're trying to do here with the 1275 project, is basically taking 40 years of legacy in terms of how we work and how the company, it's a very successful company, has worked, and transform those workspaces into something that helps us kind of retain the essence of what we do, which is advancing technology, but also making sure that we do it in an efficient and a modern way. So, we continue to look at Dolby being at the crossroads of art and science, really bringing solutions to the creative community in order to make something sound better or even look better with some of our imaging technologies.
But this is where they're coming from. So
very advanced, as you can see.
That's actually John, no, I'm kidding. There's a 40-year legacy of really inventive things happening in spaces that have evolved over time to really no longer support how people work. Yet we all know from the day's events that people who are used to an environment like this would like to persist in an environment like this. And so the challenge is packing up 1,000 people and moving them into a radically different environment all at once. So it's, while we sympathize with the previous presentation, we don't have the luxury of prototyping. We've got to move everybody all at once. But Dolby has an outsized reputation for what is actually a relatively small company. In San Francisco, the bulk of their employees are here. And I think the new thing that's John's challenge is the rapid expansion into all these sites on the right-hand side around the world. But what's happened in San Francisco is that they've grown organically from their first location at 100 Potrero, which is still there and still very much part of the company, and 999 Brannan and then 475 Brannan. So really a lot of the synergies of a lot of the time that's lost from moving from building to building, and the subcultures that have been allowed to exist in those buildings, really signaled time to really change the organization and really get everyone together in the same space.
So that's why we last year decided to purchase this 16-story building, 19 stories if you count the 3 basement levels, to consolidate those 3 buildings in San Francisco with a view to essentially, number one, I think just enhancing our ability to be able to collaborate, being spread over 3 buildings, being distributed like that, no matter how well-intentioned you are, it's just fundamentally inefficient. So we wanted to be able to sort of bring people together so that, you know, we'd create this vertical campus so people could connect very, very quickly. You know, it's also important, as Randy said earlier on, given that Dolby is a very tenured resident as a company in San Francisco, to be in such a prominent place in mid-market was an exciting proposition for us. You know, we wanted a place to be able to promote our technologies. Dolby is it's a very humble company, you know, even though we've done a lot and we provide a lot of value when it comes to advancing, you know, sensational clarity. It's not something that we boast about. We let our technology speak for itself, but this is an opportunity to sort of step out a little bit and be a bit more visible. Increasing cross-functional collaboration with, you know, the engineering community, the marketing community, bringing them together is ultimately something that will lend itself to more productivity. We want a place to bring our customers and bring the companies we work with and demonstrate how we develop that technology. You know, developing those from, you know, what essentially is a closet that's been converted into a laboratory in our current facilities into custom-built laboratories in the new building.
Yeah, when we often remind ourselves, I'll say it in the American way, laboratories is in the name of the company, and right now a lot of pressure is put on cubicles or workstations, and all of those tasks are happening on top of each other, and that's why we've ended up with the situation we've ended up with. And so part of the challenge of this project, I think, is rather than, you know, a lot of the companies that we see growing around San Francisco, you really can work anywhere, and we've seen those environments, but when you're dealing with the kinds of hardware and, you know, enormous movie projectors, theater projectors, and the types of requirements we have, you know, rooms with unheard of acoustic qualities of NC10. You can't really do that anywhere, and so we're trying, you know, we're trying to shift the balance of activity from all happening in workstations to happening in labs and workstations and other places. You know, all of the things that we all talk about with lots of our clients, but really trying to convince a population that has grown for the past 40 years in a comfortable place that they are. So, you know, making that sale that all makes sense to us, decreasing individual space, you know, a quarter, 25% or about, and increasing lab space by almost 300%, still is a difficult sell for a population. And really convincing them that those functions are actually best suited in other locations, not at their individual workstation. So if you're trying to focus, having somebody literally soldering at the cubicle next to you is not helping that situation. So it's really about enabling the kind of critical R&D that is going to kind of help Dolby enter the next phase of its history. And as we saw in those earlier images, there's been these sort of cycles of invention or innovation that have really created new markets for Dolby, and you know, starting out with the noise reduction, and you know, now with the company entering the space of, you know, business to business teleconferencing and all sorts of other technologies. The next big thing is still out there for what Dolby's going to be in the future, and we're trying to position the company to ride that wave. So in addition to focused work and R&D, it's trying to make the, you know, the sale on all of these other things that we are fairly confident the workplace can and should support. And it's the old me versus we argument, and trying to, you know, make that real with a population that isn't used to.
I think that's a key part of the challenge, is taking what people realize today is their cube, their space, is this is what I do and this is where I do it. Reducing that to, in essence, a piece of furniture, and convincing them that their ability to work and collaborate is now dispersed throughout the building, and their ability to develop technology is now in a custom-built lab. You know, we have a mixed tenure of employees across, you know, the 1,600 or so in the company, and you know, some people adapt, some people, you know, it's not so easy, and that's really the change management challenge that we have ahead of us.
So, you know, moving from an individual entitlement to shared resources is a big part of that that change that we're working through, and transforming that culture from where they are today to where they're going, and using prototypes and mock-ups to help study that and get feedback and really involve employees in that process so they don't feel that they're just being kind of thrown 6 blocks away into a completely different environment. And there's a lot of changes, and Dolby's a very grassroots organization. It's not a top-down organization. Things are built around consensus, and when you're going through a complex project like this, things are going to change, but Kevin, the CEO, is very committed to these 8 goals, and we always, in every presentation, remind everyone of these, and as long as we're true to these, which we established at the beginning of the project, we'll ultimately be successful. So that's the sort of transforming the culture part, no small task. The transforming the building part, Dolby is a company that operates in lots of dark labs because they're dealing with, they would actually work well in here, they were dealing with lots of projection and sound, and so they bought a building that actually has the most surface area possible of windows, so that's a challenge.
Problem solving.
It has, challenging floor-to-floor heights where you're trying to have certain labs where, every inch that you increase the floor, you have to have this, it's all proportional because of sound waves and light waves and things like that. So that's challenging. And then trying to not replicate the 3 separate buildings by putting everyone on 16 different floors and ending up with kind of a different problem, but, how do we create a vertical campus right at the corner of 9th and Market? And how do we turn this, it was the State Compensation Insurance Fund building, which sounds as glamorous as it looks right now. How do we turn that into a world-class research facility where it's not all open offices and foosball tables, there's serious labs happening?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. Part of the preparation was visiting a lot of companies like Facebook, like Google, and seeing some of the more modern spaces. And, imagining some of our tenured engineers in some of those very cramped, very modern spaces was, brought a chuckle to a lot of people's faces. But to Randy's point, in addition to making it open, bright, collaborative, there's some work that needs to be done in some very custom spaces that need to be allocated throughout the building. So that again, finding that balance is a bit of a challenge.
And I think it's, Dolby owns this building, so there's long-term thinking about what kind of company they want to be, and there's investment happening in those labs and those facilities that will ultimately make them successful for 40 more years. And then lastly, the commitment to the city center. There's the little bird there. They're to the next door neighbors, right? So Dolby's moving onto a very sort of illustrious block of the new San Francisco, and I think it's no accident that that's the location they chose. And I think that in terms of the engagement of, the idea of sensational clarity and the products that they are part of have such an engaging presence and bring joy to people's lives that I think we're looking for real transformation of the ground plane and the street life at that corner that a lot of the neighbors can't necessarily provide. So stay tuned for that. And just a little kind of teaser of how we're trying to essentially excavate, huge portions of the floors of this pancake building to create that kind of social center for the company that doesn't necessarily have one now is what we're kind of working on within a 1975 skeleton. So that's kind of where we are.
Yeah, it's a very exciting project. I mean, as many problems as we have, and we talk about here, the entire company is really excited about the prospect of moving into this building next year. Even just talking about the location of the building, as we think about being at the crossroads of art and science, it's no surprise that we're moving into what we think is the epicenter, the cultural epicenter of San Francisco, with the symphony, the opera, all of the theaters. So that's a real exciting proposition for Dolby as well, being where we are in the entertainment industry.
Any questions?